Hi guys, this is Atco. Well, I'm going to get back onto my game room. I've done 4 chapters of going on my one game room, and this is going to be the 5th and the last. So being on just one room, I just needed too many things to do it on one video, and this should finish it up. So what we'll do, we'll start on chapter 5 right now. Now what I'm going to do in the back is have a side picture of the back wall, and then I'll also take pictures of around the rest of my game room that I haven't already covered, and we'll take shots off that as well. Now on the back wall, and actually all around the room, you'll see I've got these 45 records on the wall, and they're all in their sleeves. Now I had a friend of mine once had put up 78s along the wall there, just at the top, and I thought they really looked cool, so I started putting them all over the place and almost as wallpaper. But I like them. It reminds me of, I sure did spend a lot of time with 45s back when I was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But anyways, every one of these records that are in there, they've all got the sleeves that match the record. And what was cool back then, back in the 60s, there was about 200 record companies that you could buy your new records and start them and get out there and put them on the radio and make some money out of them. 200. As of today, there's about 5 companies that do it. So things have changed a lot. But back then, you had all these different companies. Some of them were companies as well, smaller companies underneath of a bigger company. As you can see here, the Beatles did this one, and the record was done by the company BJ. Plus and another one here, and it's just like this one. You'll see that all the record label and the sleeve all match, and all these different companies got those all around there. So anyways, from there, let's move around. You'll see I've got a old phonograph. This one's from Edison, a cylinder player. This thing probably came out 1910, maybe 1905, and it has about 60 cylinders in there. Then off to the side, I also have a RCA Victrola, practically from the 20s, and that was with the discs with all 78 RPM. I didn't open that thing up because I had things on top of it, but I liked having that. Okay, and then along from that is one of my radios. This one's a Philco, probably from around, I'd say 1932, somewhere in the 32 to 1935 range. I bought this thing on Craigslist. Got that, it was completely restored. I think I paid $75 for it. I like that. I was really doing some antique radios for a while. I was picking them up, but it didn't work either from going to yard sales or Hamfest, and repairing them, and a couple of them I did completely restore. Did that for 2 or 3 years, and then got kind of tired of it Haven't done one of those for a while, but I had maybe 12 or 13 of those radios around the game room. I'm down to 5 now, slowly cutting things down, but that was one of my favorites. Now, along with that, I used to have a Seeburg jukebox that I had for 15 years and got rid of that just last year, but I couldn't get rid of the pinball machine yet. So this is my pinball. Boy, I'll tell you, back in the 60s and the 70s, I spent a lot of time in those, and when I was in the service, we played those things all the time. A lot of fun with those. Okay, on top of that though, I have some stuff I bought when I was in the service. I was in the Philippines for 15 months, and then along with the 15 months that I was there, I was also in Thailand for 2 months. I didn't get to see much of Thailand because we were putting 12-hour shifts at that time. But the few things that I had that I want to remember, since I was smoking when I was in the service, I had my lighter from Thailand, and then all my lighter from when I was in the Philippines. I was working with repairing mostly radar equipment. So I also, on the top of my pinball machine, I wanted to have little models of all 4 of the planes that I used to repair. One was a F4E, which was a fighter, as well as an A10, and then a A7, also fighters, and then the C-130, which was a cargo plane that I probably spent that mainly when I was in the Philippines. Okay, moving away from my pinball machine, you'll see a cabinet. It's full of 78 records. I got that from my dad. He had quite a collectible of the old songs from the 1930s, 1940s. Must be at least 578 records in there. When my mom had to move into an assisted living facility, and I told her I wanted all the records of my dad's because my dad's passed, and I got those, and I brought all the way up into my house where I live now up in Maryland. I went through every one of those records maybe 10 years ago, and I picked out the ones that I really liked, and there's probably about 20 of them, 30 of them that I put out on as videos on my channel. But I eventually took them all off when they started getting real crazy with the copyright. I didn't know if it would go that far into the 30s and 40s, although technically it would still hit copyright for that. I didn't know if it would for that stuff, but I didn't want to get involved with it, so I just deleted it. And it's too bad because I got a lot of comments from those records. Okay, on top of that is one of my models. It's a model of an old Wurlitzer jukebox. It plays CDs, and it's got cool, like the old Wurlitzer jukebox. It's got a bubbler in it. I don't have it plugged on that thing right now, but it looks really cool. It's got these little Wurlitzer speakers too. Then off to the left side of that is my Troll Hermit. Back in the 80s, I was doing a lot of trips. A lot in this country and a lot international. And I went to Norway a couple times, and when I was there, they're really into these trolls. You can buy them everywhere. They're always for sale, but when you go into the city, they've got these big statues in the main city of these trolls that could be 8 feet high. And I had to have one of these. I've had him in my room before I got married, wherever I go. I just like that little thing. I've always had to call him Herman. He's always there. I don't know if it does any good for me or not, but I always got to have him. Along with other dolls. I'm going to show these other ones that I've spent these around the room. I'll just talk a little bit and just let them kind of scan across. You know, I got some of these different comedians from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Of course, I love the Planet of the Apes. Stuff from science fiction, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, all that stuff. I like those. I got them spread around, and those are pretty much those that I have. I even got a few that I forgot to put in, but I think you got the idea of what I like. I do have a poster of the Beatles, and I keep that because I was just a kid in the 60s, 1964, and the Beatles were new, but they were really popular, and they came out with their first movie. I don't know how many movies they did. I don't think they did many, but they did this one, A Hard Day's Night. My sister and I went down to downtown Pittsburgh, and when this movie came out, and it was crazy in there. Everybody was screaming and yelling, and I remember the movie wasn't very good, but it sure was a lot of noise in there, and I couldn't hear for probably a week or so, but you know, I was into the Beatles just as much as anybody else and enjoyed that. And that's why I got this little set of the Beatles playing in there. I like having that. Got that from my birthday one day. Okay, other things I have, I've got a slot machine. Now this one is actually it's a toy, but it's a very well toy. I saw this once at a ham fest, and it was, at first I thought it was a real one, but it wasn't. But it feels good, it runs good, it's like 18 inches high, and I thought, well, you know, those darn things go up to $1,000, and I get this thing for like $40. And a lot of the stuff that I keep in my game room, I want it because I remember those things. I don't care that if it's not the same one, and that it's more of a replica and all that. I don't have any trouble with that, as long as I can just see what it was and bring back ideas. And I never got into too much of the slot machines, but I thought this was pretty cool. And it's amazing when I go into my game room, when I get really young kids, you know, anybody that's like 8 years old, all those kids know that slot machine. I don't know why. They all go in there and they gotta play with it. As a matter of fact, I usually have trouble getting them to stop playing with it. But I like having that. Okay, then let's move around a little bit. As you'll see, I've got like my arcade area. I remember all those really early arcade video games that came out, you know, Pac-Man and Frogger, and of course Pong and all that stuff. Back in the 70s, when they were first coming out, you used to go into the bars and they had the full-size game of that, and people would be standing in line waiting to get into use their quarter, to use their machine. I'd like to have some of that stuff to remember that, but even if I could have it, I wouldn't want to. I don't have the space for it. And you can see these things. You can buy these now at toy stores, and you plug it into your own TV, and you can play that same game on your TV and not have to have any machine out of it. So what I did with this thing, I put a TV out and buy 4 of those little machines, a little game. You just plug that into the thing, and all of a sudden you've got the original game back in front of you, and I can play the I think I've got a pinball machine in there, Frogger, of course, Pac-Man, and Pong. Same stuff without having to have all that big equipment. So that's my little arcade area. Okay, then also I got a TV from the 60s. Had to have something of that. Everybody was first one to have those little portable, what they called portable back then, for a TV. And I was having a lot of those in my game room at one time. I had probably 5 of them in the game room, and now I'm just down to this one. I don't need any more, but I did want to have that one to show my TVs back there. And then of course my telephones. I love my telephones, and this one was a pay phone. I'll bet it's been 30 years since anybody has seen a pay phone anywhere. But I'll tell you what, it sure is great having these cell phones with you now and not have to go down and find a pay phone somewhere down the road. It sure is made great having these cell phones instead. But I had to have one. And this, again, this is a replica. I think I got this for like 75 bucks. And I got a buddy who, he's got a game room too. Not much any bigger than mine, but everything he's got's got to be the original stuff. So for me, it's fine for me, but everything's different for people. And so, okay, now that's pretty much it. I've gone through pretty much everything in these 5 chapters. But the only thing I left to show you is that there's this one chair that I have in my game room that I've had that chair, geez, my whole life. I had an uncle back in the 60s, and he was already 80 or 90 years old, and my dad used to drive out to his place, and we'd take him to dinner at the house on Sundays, every Sunday. And when I'd go in, we'd go into his apartment, and his room just looked like, 1920 outside. And I used to sit in that one chair, and when he died, and they were taking a lot of stuff out of there, I said, I want that chair. I like that chair. And we kept it in the house until I moved out, and then I took the chair with me too. So I've had that chair with me forever. Of course, my wife has upholstery on it that she found for jukebox fabric, but the thing itself is working great. And now my table in there, you got to have a table in there, and once in a while if somebody comes in and he's going to sit for a little while, we'll sit in there for a minute to have a place to get a Coke down or something like that. Or if somebody walks in and they need me to give them a check for something, they'll come and sit down while I'm getting ready to pay my check for their fixing it for me. All of a sudden they look around, and before you know, they're going to sit there talking for 10 or 15 minutes before they leave. So that's cool. So, okay, well, that's pretty much it, guys. You've seen it, everything. And I think you won't see much changes for that from now until I landed shutting this whole thing down. So, right, guys, I hope you don't mind going through this with me. And I appreciate it. So for now, this is Atco, signing off.